one of the most important shows we'll do all year because the team is changing before our very eyes. We are back, Bleav in Vikings. B-Mac, you were off last week. Where you at? How you been?
Good. Last week I was in Orlando. We had did a show at the House of Blues for the Players Choir.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so I was there. Well, I went last Wednesday. Our show was Thursday night. I came back Friday morning. I had to do a charity kickball event on Saturday to turn back around and come right back to Orlando on Sunday because Les Chat had meetings and things like that. So, and then I just got back this morning. So it's like been a lot of back and forth and on the road.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a lot. Well, when
Yeah.
we missed you last week, and I had one question that is pertaining to last week, and I'm going to ask you because I feel like you're the perfect source for this. So, Eric Kendricks, the linebacker, he was released about a week and a half ago, and he played for the Vikings for 8 seasons. Fast
Mhm.
forward to last Friday, Adam Thielen, after 10 years with the Vikings, was released, and he'll probably sign somewhere in the next few days. And you, sir, played 9 years for the Vikings, so you're right there in the middle in terms of longevity. When does it hit you that you don't play for that team anymore, or is there sadness immediately when you depart a team, or what did it kind of feel like when your time was over with the Vikings?
You just wonder what's next. Either when you are leaving, you're wondering like, what's next? Is there a next? And then it's like going to a whole new school again. Like you know how you have to transfer to schools, so now you like once you leave there, you've been there, you've been so comfortable there, you know all the ins and outs and everything. Now that you have to learn a whole new locker room, a whole new city, and things like that. So that's probably the main thing. So those guys are probably going in. I know on the top of their mind, everything like who do they know that's there already?
Mm-hmm.
They can help show them around or make the transition a little easier. But definitely like just learning the system there, learning like and starting a whole new routine there, and things like that.
And then,
Now, along with that,
Mhm.
does like it's the players who the Vikings got rid of, obviously, they're veterans. They've had well-established careers. They've made, or they've had good contracts. So financially, they should be okay. At what part, or how would you think that they, at this stage in their career, weigh winning versus opportunity versus salary? Like, how is that kind of
And this
played out
point,
in your mind?
I think at this point in your career is really to me it was more about like okay opportunity to win because I mean like you said you played all those years so now it's about like okay since I'm now having a chance to kind of now I can kind of decide where to go or whatever more or less let me try to figure out who I view has the best opportunity so with them I don't know like the situation but like out of all the teams that are basically that was coming after them, I'm pretty sure they went with whoever they felt like was the best or had the best chance of, making a good playoff run or something like that, getting a chance to get in the Super Bowl with their addition.
Okay.
All right. So free agency week indeed came fast and furious. So I'm going to summarize the big events. I tweeted them out. If any of you guys are on Twitter. And then I want to start picking Sally's brain about some of these items and Ron, you as well. And of course, Bryant. So Eric Kendricks, he ended up with the Chargers. Patrick Peterson went to the Steelers. Dalvin Tomlinson to the Browns. Jordan Hicks stays with the club. He was restructured. Cameron Dantzler went to the Commanders. Blocking tight end Josh Oliver was the first move from the Baltimore Ravens, which kind of made a lot of us go, what? But then the deal turned out to be team friendly, but he's on the Vikings now. The big nugget, the one that really opened eyes, was Marcus Davenport, an edge rusher, came over from the Saints. On day 2, Greg Joseph was re-signed. Nick Mullins re-signed, interestingly, for 2 years. The long snapper, Andrew DePaul, is back. Garrett Bradbury is back at center. And then the nugget from last night, Byron Murphy is the new starting cornerback. Kirk Cousins' deal was converted with the proverbial kick the can to next year or 2025 if he plays beyond next year. And then we're kind of on Dalvin Cook trade watch because the Vikings re-signed Alexander Madison about 15 minutes before we hopped on the podcast. So that's it. That's all of it in a nutshell. So I'll ask you, Sally, keeping an eye on this. What was something that you enjoyed about these last 48 hours?
Honestly, I think I pretty much enjoy everything. I think that this is what I had in mind when they said competitive rebuild. This is this is what I expected them to do last year, essentially something more along these lines. I like it that they are investing in younger players. Some of them are coming off of injuries. Some of them maybe weren't in the best situations to be successful. For example, Byron Murphy playing in Arizona. And I like that these guys have a lot of potential, and they are short-term deals or team-friendly deals. So if it doesn't end up working out, they don't have their wagon hitched to them for the next 5 years. They don't have these crazy backloaded contracts that are going to have to be restructured, which is what we've been kind of stuck with the last 10 years or so, it feels like. So I really feel like this is the true fresh eyes on the franchise that we kind of expected. So I don't really have anything to complain about, well, other than the Cousins restructuring back-ended void years thing. But
yeah, it's kind of strange that they put 28.5 million into next year, which is basically the salary of a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. So Cousins, no matter what happens, he's already been paid that, so to speak. So you're going to hear the narrative next year, no matter what happens, we're paying Cousins to play for another team. That's not true. He's on the books. He's already been paid. It's like Zadarius Smith last year. He was on the Packers books. He technically wasn't being paid, but it looked that way. But yeah, it is a chunky dead cap hit no matter what. And it'll feel ugly for the entire offseason next year, because that's the way they've chose to orchestrate it to make room for Byron Murphy and those guys. Ron, what did you like most about these first, I guess it's a little bit more than 48 hours of Vikings free agency?
Well, I think Sally touched on it. I really like these shorter term deals with a certain age range of guys that are, in that 25 to 27 year age range, but also they're guys who are, early-ish picks. I mean, Davenport was a first who didn't get his second contract with the team. I think Murphy was this early second round pick. He didn't get a second contract with the team that drafted him. So you're getting these guys that in essence are out to prove something, one way or another, either prove that they deserve more money, and should have been re-signed, or they're on the financial side of it where, hey, I'm on a short-term deal. I need, by the time I'm 27, 28, to get my bag. So I really like that, and I like the fact that, again, it seems like the organization has a direction of, like, there's a type that's out there. Even the re-signing of Alexander Madison, where whatever happens with Dalvin Cook, you're getting a guy who hasn't had the opportunity to be an RB1, but clearly we've seen him in spurts and he's looked good in those spurts. So while I don't think he's the dynamic player that Dalvin is, he fits that mold of what they're going for. Guys that are essentially on the potential verge of outplaying their contract. So I like not overpaying for aging veterans, and that's not a shot at the guys we got rid of, but whether it's Darius Slay, who became available, or Stephon Gilmore, who people are, why didn't we trade whatever the fifth round for him, because you still got to pay him. So I just like that they have a defined, or what seems like a defined route that they're going. So it's we'll see what happens. There's still a lot of other names out there. They still have a lot of holes, especially in that secondary. And then there's still question marks as far as what they're going to do with Dalvin or, Harrison Smith, Zadarius Smith. So a lot up in the air, but so far, I mean, they've done good by me.
I like two things in particular: the emphasis on defense in the sweet spot age range that Sally talked about. Both Marcus Davenport and Byron Murphy, they come over, which Murphy's a 2-year deal, but it's basically a 1-year deal, and he can make a bunch more money if he performs with the Vikings or elsewhere. We all watched the playoff game. That was nauseating. And so now they're doing something to fix it between the Brian Flores addition, getting younger on defense, which is what we clamored for. And they get it. They realize it. They realize the defense wasn't up to par. So they're taking 3 remedial steps in Flores, Davenport, and Murphy to fix it. And this is just the beginning. We still have a draft. We still have more free agency. And then secondly, I do enjoy the fact that Kirk Cousins is now on his final year, because we have this, I think we've all been chatting about it for 2.5 years. We have this golden opportunity once and for all to draft a guy. And I don't care if that is Clayton Tune in round 5 or it's Hendon Hooker in round 2 or 3 if we somehow get a second round pick. You have this opportunity to do it the right way, the way the Chiefs did it, the way the Packers do it. And I hate to say it that way. And it's just have the one guy marinate for a year while you have a damn good quarterback on a contract year when he usually plays well because he's up against it. And that's when Kirk plays best somehow. And I love that we have that flexibility. Now, that said, they have to draft a quarterback to make that happen. Bryant, do you think now that Cousins seems like he's going to be playing out his contract, a rarity for a QB1 of his stature, do you think the Vikings will draft some sort of quarterback in April?
I think they should. I mean, they might not draft high, but I feel like they should to be able to start grooming somebody behind him in case of injury and just in case of, to his time being up and him not playing well or something next season.
Sally, do you think that finally happens? I mean, we did a diet version of it with Kellen Mond. That flamed out, which is usually what happens when Vikings draft quarterbacks since Dante. Do you think they actually do it?
I don't know. I want to say yes. I would love to see that. But I think with the limited amount of draft picks that they have and how many holes are in this team, I don't know. I would love to see them do that. And I think especially with having Kevin O'Connell as a head coach, I'm sure that is an emphasis for something that he desires. I don't think they want to go into next year not really having a plan or knowing who their guy is. So I hope so, unless maybe they're planning to roll with Mullins next year. Maybe that's why there was the 2-year deal. I don't know. But I hope so. It's just they're in a bad spot right now with the draft. So
in all seriousness, Mullins could very well be the patch over guy. No matter who, if it's Hendon Hooker, if it's somebody who's not quite ready, if it's somebody they draft in 2024. Sally, will you do it service for you if it is a mid-rounder like Jaren Hall in round 3 or 4, or does the way that you've always wanted it, a guy of our own, does that have to be a first rounder?
No, I don't think it's important that they're a first rounder, especially with who is in charge of this team right now, because I think Kevin O'Connell has experience being a former quarterback and being experienced with working at different levels of offense. He knows who he's looking for, and he knows better than really anybody, I think, in the building, but even than a lot of other teams, he, I'm sure, has a lot of guys in mind that are meant to be later round picks. And I think that almost is better. And there's a lot less pressure on the team and the guy himself, the quarterback himself. So I would prefer that, honestly.
Ron, I think in the grand scheme of the Vikings community, you and I are labeled as Cousins eternalists or Cousins stands. And my major thing about Cousins has always been that people make shit up about him. And that's the reason I got the label, is because I try to dispel the stuff that isn't true. All of that said, are you content with this deal playing out? And if it's another Kirk type year, 30 touchdowns, blah, 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 and then they lose in the wild card divisional round, are you content going with anonymous quarterback X in 2024?
I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be content with going from unknown to an unknown commodity. And that's, I remember that 2011 year when it was McNabb into Ponder, and neither were good options. And I don't want that. So again, like, if it bottoms out and whatever and shit goes south, sure, like, absolutely. Then the design of where you're projected to go. But I also don't like the idea of being, picking at 23 and, having to reach to get maybe the 4th guy in this draft class. So I'd much rather, right, exactly. Like, I'd rather than look in the, 3rd round, whatever, see if you can find someone that their talent was overlooked. So much like how Brock Purdy was used in San Francisco, I don't think it's a matter of that Brock Purdy's a Hall of Fame quarterback yet, was in the right system, right place, and he looked the part, and that's really all he needed to do. So based on this draft, like, I don't like the idea of going for a quarterback at all in the first, unless somehow, you move up, you identify a guy, and this is the plan. We're going to try to replicate what the Chiefs did with Alex Smith into Mahomes. If that's the case, I'm all for it. I just don't see it out of any of these guys that are worth that risk. And then I'd much rather be more all in and doing it next year, in next year's class. So, while again, you probably lose more, as far as leverage, like, because everyone's going to know, hey, you need a quarterback. But if you look at it just pure numbers, if 4 teams are drafting their quote unquote franchise quarterback this year, and then all the other guys that are around the league that are quote unquote franchise quarterbacks, the old guys being, Brady's already gone, Rodgers, well, who knows what the hell he's going to do. But there's, if you look at it that way, you could easily say that maybe 25 teams are comfortable with their quarterback going into next year. So that might lessen the blow. That makes Caleb Williams or Drake May viable options. So that's the route I would go. But I'm all for not tying yourself down with Kirk Cousins into his late 30s as well. There needs to be a succession plan. I get that. But I don't want to see us go from stable quarterback play to, being what the Colts are, like rolling into aging vets that are after their, like, not at the end of their career, they're post their utilization days. So, I just don't want to see that, because then, the argument now is for Justin Jefferson, and it's what leverage or what reason does he have to stay here if he's got Tyler Huntley throwing him the football, like, or, that type of stuff. So we'll see what happens. I trust O'Connell and Kwesi to identify that. They're not dumb, so they'll. It's not like they're going, oh, we need a quarterback. Well, let's go find one off the scrap heap today.
And it's worth mentioning that between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis, who will probably go in the top 10, maybe top 12, at least 2 of them are going to be very good. And that's all there is to it. It would have to be the first draft class in like history where all 4 of them hit. So that's just a point of order that perhaps if they lurk in the mid rounds and do something with Jaron Hall or Clayton Tune, then, maybe that's the guy who could sit and develop for a year and then take over at an undetermined time, maybe 2024. Sally, what was the biggest surprise in since Monday? When you got the alert and you're like, what?
Oh gosh, what was the biggest surprise? The biggest surprise, honestly, is my really this is the most excited I've been for a season in as long as I can remember, and it's March 15th. So I just feel very rejuvenated. Obviously, I got excited last year with the run and everything, but I mean, this is different because there are so many unknowns and there's so many different players to watch now and to see them develop. So I mean, I'm just excited about it all. As I guess what surprised me, and I think everybody, was just Josh Oliver, the tight end, just being their first move. I like it that he is more of a blocking tight end because obviously we know Hawkinson is going to get all of the tight end targets, but that is something that they have been missing, I think, especially since, gosh, they've been missing that since I mean, so a few. Okay, I wasn't gonna go that far back.
Wiggins.
But yeah. So
well, we haven't had a pure
like.
We haven't had a pure blocker who is, again, not just being a blocker, but has the ability to catch the ball since Jimmy. Like, ironically, I sent you guys a photo of him coaching against my nephew this weekend. But I think the underrated part too about Josh Oliver, like, because everyone's looking at it as he's this blocking tight end, which he is, but he's also a freak athlete. He, coming out of San Jose State, he was he's what, 6'5", 250 pounds. He kind of worked himself into becoming a run blocker or a blocking tight end, but he was an athlete coming out of that. I think he was a 3rd or 4th pick from Jacksonville, just didn't pan up there. Went to Baltimore, and Baltimore always has blocking tight ends as a number 2, whether it's Nick Boyle, they had Max Williams out of Minnesota here, just guys who are capable blockers. So I just like the dynamic of that personnel package that we can go into, and it leaves TJ Hawkinson to be, not have to be that blocker and more free in the slot and, running up the seams. So but don't discount the Oliver being able to catch the ball either, because I think he adds some value there.
Brian, I want to ask you that on this topic. So the very first move of Vikings free agency was to sign a tight end. And between tight end and offensive tackle, those were like the two spots where most of us were like, yeah, we don't need any more. And then boom, the first thing that hits our notifications is the Vikings signed a tight end. For context, he's from the Ravens and he's known as a blocking tight end. So we referenced Kleinsasser. How much easier did that man make your life as a left tackle?
Oh, good, because you have a lot of tight ends who don't want to block, or they're Shanko, who was like, help me. It's like, let me get my job done first, and I'll come back and help you. So to be able to have some confidence in your tight end and knowing that he's not going to be screaming for help before the ball snaps is a good thing.
And you had that, gosh, was that, I have to think about the time frame here. I think your entire Vikings life was with Kleinsasser, right?
I believe so. I believe he was there the whole time.
Yeah, because we spent an unholy high
draft class.
Yeah, unholy high draft pick on a fullback, which you look back now and you giggle. But yeah, he was there, I'm pretty sure, your entire tenure. So that's all you knew from Vikings football was him being there, at least.
Yeah, for the most part.
What about you, Ron, on surprises? Mine was Marcus Davenport, because he was in the edge class of this free agency. He was at the top of most people's lists. And I just figured, because, Zadarius Smith was content until last week and that we didn't have any cap space, that he wasn't attainable. Boom, we get him for a year for $13 million, and it can be extended for longer if he enjoys his stay and performs well. Do you have something different than Davenport that surprised you?
No, that's absolutely the one that stands out, because like you said, with Zadarius Smith, like I assumed that he was coming back, and who knows if he is or not, but I didn't think edge rusher was the premium need in free agency. I thought that they'd go to the draft or develop some of the younger guys that they have. But it'll be interesting to see how he fits in, because I know the Saints kind of played a little bit of 3-4. I don't think he's very good at dropping into coverage, which in Flores' defense needs to be kind of a little malleable like that. And I know he only had a half a sack last year, but he gets pressure, like we talked about with Smith and Hunter. They might not have gotten the sack numbers, but they're causing havoc in the backfield. So, and he's a huge player. So he could be that guy that can come over and move and play 3 technique in those hybrid formations. I mean, at 6'6", 270, and he's a freak athlete. Like, that's why the Saints traded up, 2 first-round picks to get him. So didn't work out there, and hopefully this is one of those reclamation projects, or get him on the rise and parlay that into a nice tandem with Hunter on the other side.
Sally, Greg Joseph is back on a fully guaranteed deal, which really isn't saying much because it's just a dinker kicker deal. So in theory, if they still wanted to draft like the kicker from Michigan or something, like, or not draft him, but get him an undrafted free agency, they could have another summer camp battle. But for now, it appears that Greg Joseph is going to remain the incumbent kicker. And guy was weird as hell, cold-blooded when it mattered the most, led the league in game-winning field goals, kicked them like nobody's business, and then ranked 28th in other just regular field goal accuracy. Are you content knowing week 1 will likely have Greg Joseph as the kicker again?
Well, I do like that there is consistency in the specialty players for once. It seems like every single year we're turning those over. I think that Thomason, I saw a tweet from him that said this is there was only one other time in the last 9 years that they retained all of the specialty players. And one of those years was when Dan Bailey was released. What was that, about midway through the season? So I do enjoy the consistency. I do like that. However, I would like to have him have a little competition at training camp, ideally, just because of those extra point struggles and short kick struggles. But it doesn't sound like that's going to happen now. And honestly, I'm not, it's fine. As long as he stays that way.
Yeah. I've debated this one. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just crazy. I know we've mentioned this before, but it's crazy that those extra point misses never came back to bite them in the end.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it feels like they eventually will. And that might just be our cynicism. But I've kicked this one around in my brain since the season ended, because I didn't know if they were going to bring him back. And I think what you do is you say, all right, this guy, he could not miss. He really hasn't missed a clutch kick since that Cardinals gaffe almost 2 years ago now. And then, but then you start to think, well, we should be able to find a kicker who can do both, which is hit most game winners, hit his goddamn extra points, and be decent with the rest of the field goals. So you want to think, all right, let's not settle for just a guy who does one thing. Let's get the whole thing. But then you have this paradox where if you say, all right, he can go kick elsewhere, and you draft a guy, and then this son of a bitch can't hit game winners, you're going to say, why did we let Joseph go? That's where I get torn as to the emotions of it.
Yeah, it can always be worse. We know that. So it's risky.
What is on that laundry list of items, whether it's Kendricks' release or the Cousins contract being kicked down to an extra year to the tune of $28 million, Sally, what's something that has disappointed you in the last 2.5 days about the offseason?
I mean, like I said, nothing has really disappointed me, to be honest, other than the Kirk Cousins thing. But I mean, being fully transparent, I don't understand all of that. I mean, I've heard different people explain it, and I think I understand it. And then I hear you explain it, and then I'm like, oh, well, maybe it's not as detrimental as I assumed it was. So, I mean, I'm glad that they were able to work out a situation where they could sign some people. But yeah, that's the only complaint that I have, and it might not even be a real complaint after hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, well, it's a fair complaint, because if you have a big master plan for 2024, life after Kirk, then his cap hit, at least in spirit, is going to be staring you in the face for a whole year, and you're going to think, oh, that guy plays for the Raiders now, and he has this huge cap hit, and it's just going to get on your nerves, so to speak. But given what you know now, transferring the money to the last year of his contract, would you rather have been him extended by an extra year or two? So yeah, that's what you basically had to pick from.
Never.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you had to
take it.
Yeah, you had to pick either doing some financial kicking of the can or keeping him employed contractually through the end of 2024. Those were really the options, because you can't cut him. And evidently, and I don't think that they want to do either one of those things. I think they believe in Kirk, and that's why he's still the quarterback. But at age 35, you never know what you're getting into contractually. And then in terms of he could show up September or whatever it is and just look like shit. That's happened before for older quarterbacks. Ron, your anything that's been disappointing in 2.5 days for you?
I mean, I haven't been disappointed necessarily with anything going on Vikings wise, just because I think it's all to be expected. And then some of the signings, were, hey, like that's a surprise, but in a good way. I think just more so disappointing is just the league as a whole, the way that the Rodgers, the Lamar Jackson, how that's all playing out, and it just baffles me. Rodgers again, the attention whore that he is. Like, this isn't to make a decision today. Like, shut the hell up. Just you're going to the Jets. If you're playing, just say it one way or another. So that's dumb. How the league is looking at Lamar Jackson and a 26-year-old former unanimous MVP, and these crickets on the front there, because that's just weird. That just seems more like it's a owner's struggle than it is the player side. But yeah, at least the Vikings are staying out of the drama on that side of it, and I think they're handling things appropriately. Like when it comes to the release of Kendricks, the release of Thielen, they're not just stacking them all up like, oh, we're releasing all these guys. Like, it's Kendricks, you get your time. Thielen, you get your time, but also giving them the opportunity to be a part of this first wave of free agency. So can't blame them on that regard. And I guess the Harrison Smith, that might be the only disappointing thing. Like, what is going on? Like, is he staying? Is he going? And then Dalvin Cook. So just maybe the foresight on those. It'd be nice to know a little more as we're in free agency now, and not come draft time and get another swift kick in the nuts at that point.
Bryant, as a former Raven, do you expect Lamar Jackson to be back as their QB1 in week 1?
I don't understand the issue with that at all. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that, but I don't understand why they wouldn't just go ahead and get the deal done. I feel like he's come in and has done a great job and added excitement to the franchise, things like that. Show that he can, be a key player, but I don't understand what the holdup is with just solidifying him still young and get him in there, make him feel comfortable to be a quarterback.
I think it's more so along the lines of the owners don't want to be dealing with these fully guaranteed contracts like the Deshaun Watson deal. And I think he's essentially being used as a pawn in this, that like the owners are seeing this as, well, if we give him all that money, then what's going to stop the next guy? Like it's going to continue to compound and you're never going to win a CBA, argument with the players on these type of contracts. So I think he's literally the pawn, and it's just terrible optics because he is a 26-year-old former MVP. Clearly, everything he checks the boxes on, whether it's you're looking at win percentage or just performance. You can't say any other than maybe the potential injury concern being a scrambling quarterback. There's no reason why he shouldn't be getting $50 million in a long-term deal from the team that put the investment into him.
Well, it also makes you just feel like, well, how committed is the team to me? Like, you know what I mean? Just makes you question the team too. So.
All right. The final question I have, I will start with you, Sally, is by Friday, the third day of the league year, Dalvin Cook, Harrison Smith, and Zadarius Smith have somewhat substantial amounts of money that lock in if they're not moved. Out of those three guys, do you want to pick out one prediction that you think will occur in the next 3 days?
Well, it is. I mean, I don't even know what to think about Zadarius requesting a trade. That's a bummer. And I know we know he sold his house and everything, but I just didn't really see that coming. And then to pretty much already announce on Twitter that he's out of here. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's going to be hard to believe that he would be on the roster. I guess, but Dalvin too, I guess I'm going to say neither one of them will be on the team.
Okay. Mine, out of those three is, I think if Harrison Smith wasn't going to restructure or take a pay cut or whatever he's faced with, I think he would have said, I'm gone by now.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he would have had he's a veteran fringe Hall of Famer. He probably would have had the pick, 10, 12 teams chatting him up, I think, for a year or two. And he's sort of missed that opportunity now. So that leads me to believe that he'll come back and finish his career with the Vikings. He's 34, so he probably only has about 1 or 2 years left as a hard-hitting safety. I predict he'll be back. I don't know if it'll be a huge pay cut or if they'll just do the thing they did with Cousins and put some more money on the back, but I do think he'll be back. Ron, what is yours? Oh, yeah,
how
sorry.
can you go against this?
Did you find out any additional information on that? There is what Chris posted. That's all that.
Thomason hasn't talked to me since my birthday at the end of September, so I don't have any more insight in that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why, but I mean, you can't argue with it. This is facts, obviously.
Yeah, no, I kid you not. When I saw that,
I guess the listeners don't know what I was showing. I was showing Prince's pick from Thomason's tweet.
Yeah, so this is on video, but then there are hundreds of folks that listen. She showed the tweet of Chris Thomason asking Harrison Smith about his 2023 plans, and he replied with a picture of Prince wearing a thick chain, and that's all he said. No text, no captions. Chris asked him for a follow-up, and there was no reply. So image speaks 1,000 words, evidently. I think Hitman will be back. What is your prediction out of all three of those? You don't have to tell me all of them, but Ron, out of Cook, the Smiths, what's one thing you expect to happen the next 2 days, 3 days?
Well, I think there has to be some sort of Harrison Smith news dropping soon because that's kind of a big domino. Obviously, I Bleav they're under the cap. They're operating as if they are. So I think the Zadarius and Dalvin may go into the kind of the draft process because again, those are assets that we can trade. Whereas Harrison, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of people wanting to, give up assets for an aging safety on a high dollar contract. So I think if he's gone, it's just going to be an outright release. The other two, I think, will be traded if they're gone. So hopefully tomorrow something comes, or, they've been talking about it all week.
Yeah.
Kind of very Rodgers-esque, like, oh, I think there's going to be something happening on on the Harrison Smith front today, and then just tell us what's up, and
I'm hoping if
see
they
where we go from
Ron,
there.
Mhm.
Yes,
Ron, you didn't bring up Daniel Jones today.
Not
I
yet.
did not.
He's got Darren Waller now. All of the talkers are dead. He's gonna be fine.
Darren Waller's gonna look great watching balls sail at his feet.
I oh, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, I'm hoping if Dalvin and Za'Darius are traded, I have this pipe dream they can get like some mid-rounders for them. I know it's probably not going to be. I'm hoping 2/4, but I'm guessing it'll be slimmer if those deals even shake down. Because it's really strange on offense. If Dalvin Cook is not traded, we're basically running the thing back without Adam Thielen. You'll have Madison back, Dalvin back, same offensive line, Hawkinson's in there. And it's going to, I mean, this is not an insult. The offense played quite well, but I really did not think that both Cook and Madison would be back. I would have bet a lot of money on them being gone. So we shall see. I think we'll know by the time we meet next week for the show what the verdict is of running back, or at least for Dalvin's future. Bryant, do you have any travel plans or anything this week you want to tell the group about, or taking it easy now?
No, I just got back this morning, so I'm taking it easy. And for the most part, I feel like I'm here until I have a fundraiser on April 13th here. So I think I'm here now for the next month until then, I think. Unless the Players Choir randomly has like a show, and then I have to go there for that.
Yeah, how was the show? Because you've been away for a while, right?
Yeah, the show was actually really good. The longest show I've ever done, it was 25 to 30 minutes. It was about 67 songs. It felt like a workout. It was completely a sold out show. It's like this is really a band. I can't believe it, but it's been fun.
So
Check off Rockstar on your list.
How much practice time did you get with them then before doing a show
The
that
day
long?
before, like we had 2 days of practice basically. So
Okay.
a lot of those guys have been there. Just so happens it seemed like every time they had a show, I was already somewhere else or scheduled to go to Hawaii or just had something else going on at the same time. So this is the first one I've actually been since AGT. So a lot of them already knew stuff. So for me, when it comes to like moving and stuff like that, I can pick up quick. And the songs they did, I already knew. So when it came to the steps and stuff, I kind of just watch. I was able to just pick that up easy. So it wasn't too hard.
Well, and if you were to make a mistake and not be in sync with anyone, like you're the biggest one out there. It's gonna be you can't just skate by. So
Right, but you gotta remember, I
good.
take these dance classes and stuff like that. So for
Right.
me, I'm more of the person who has more of awareness when it comes to the routines and the steps and the memory for it. So
right, and I just mean like being in sync with the other guys, like because if you're off, like there's no way in hiding it. It's not like
right. So that won't happen. What I'm saying.
right.
He's telling you he's that damn good. He can handle it.
Well, the feet of a left tackle, I guess.
Right.
Pro Bowl left tackle at that.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty good. It's been pretty exciting actually. So yeah, who knows? I don't know what's next. I guess I hear what else may be coming up. But for the most part, I plan to be here for the next month to get past my event, and then I can look for traveling or whatever else again after that.
Excellent. All right, gang. Well, we'll recommence next Wednesday and talk about the back half of the juicy stuff of free agency and get everything covered. Anything else?
No.
All right, guys. We'll see you in 1 week.